Yay. Hi.
Welcome again to the Seattle Network. Thank you so much for joining me and bringing your expertise on leather, specifically the leather industry. That's what we're really here to talk about. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think it's kind of a cool thing to be here because I don't think the audience maybe knows how long we've known each other. So, I mean, gosh, how, what we were, it's going on 20 years, I think now, right? We met
That sounds like an
30,
anniversary.
yeah, I feel like that sounds like an anniversary. It's been like, you know, and I think to
Mm,
to me, I was thinking about
yeah.
this last night, like the history of how we know each other. We met in band around music.
Also
And I
saxophone.
think, yes, both on the saxophone. But I think like that to me was just a beating heart of like why I'm so excited to have this conversation with you because there was culture and music is kind of what brought us together as friends, and we've stayed
Oh.
friends over all these years. And I think that that's a good transition into like what I think leather does and what I think leather does for industry and business. It's a cultural aspect, but it's also a business aspect. So I thought,
That's freaking beautiful. Oh, okay. We age well then. And the
I think we
quality
aged pretty
is,
well. Yeah, for
oh
sure.
my gosh.
For
No,
sure.
I love that so much. And, it's amazing because even in your career, you've been totally global. You're trotting through globally. We're blazing through. I was blazing through the other side and the global side of things. And then when we, had our reconnections and everything, it was really cool to understand how much we're doing really high level like expertise and stakeholder management. And it was really cool knowing that someone else in Michigan honestly
Yes.
was doing the same. And so I'm always like, I feel like the honor and privilege of my state when I connect with you and we talk about these things because I think that's just super powerful. And I think I
Yeah.
always kind of like left home too to like go on, like I have a sense of adventure and I know you have a sense of adventure. So it's like for us to be able to help give value back to the marketplace of everything that we've seen around the world.
Yeah.
I mean, it's invaluable. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
I think that there's a key component of both of our experience, especially international experience. You living out in Australia and I finishing my master's in England. I think today we live in such a world where it's so easy to do a work from home, a digital workspace,
Hmm.
and stay in your community, which is not a bad thing. And I don't think that is bad, but I think it's also great to see the world, see how those cultures intertwine, how they view the same problem in different ways, and how that affects the business. And like you said, those stakeholder decisions, those investments. And I think the more we have people that have, maybe a local presence, but an international experience, the
Yeah.
better we can have these conversations about how do we make more sustainable decisions in our business. Because most businesses nowadays are global. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very hard to find a business unless you have a family owned local business. But even then, you can throw your stuff up on Etsy and have
Hmm.
it be global in 2 seconds. So, this idea of understanding it in an international context, I think, is something cool that we both bring to the table. And I encourage other younger people to continue to invest in that international experience because I didn't have many other people other than you to really talk about when I came back, to my hometown to say like it really opens your eyes once you start to have that experience of what other people are seeing around the world, and it changes your view on business
Yeah.
and products like leather. So
Okay. Okay, let's go straight into my time in Australia real quick and how we go into this meat
yeah,
and leather side and manufacturing and fashion and automobiles and everything because I'm gonna just put it out there. So one, my network is kind of all sorts of flavors, I guess. I
yeah,
feel like every single ice cream flavor. So we have definitely the huge advertising side, and even them, they are everywhere. Some of them are still in advertising, and they're like doing really hardcore Fortune 50 stuff. And others have gone on the client side, still the Fortune 50 stuff. They're just doing it from more of the marketing side. So I have the advertising side, the marketing side. Then there's the startup side, the folks who are disrupting the market. So every kind of layer of the ecosystem. And I want to kind of drill in this area of like Australia, because at my time in Australia, and this is what I know about the leather industry and how it crosses meat, and I'm just gonna put it right on the table, and we can go from there. I was always kind of detached from certain things. And when I was living in Sydney and we were just doing one campaign after another, one product launch after another, everyone there was super, super educated and had a lot. There was culture coming from every single place. So it was like not just tourism every single day, but there was strong national pride there about their cattle, about farming, about agriculture, local, it was all about the import and export nature of it, because there were so many fees and taxes and custom fees for the import export business, because Australia's like so far away. So like, I mean, like anything you ship to it doesn't even have to be food, for goodness sakes. It could be anything. And it costs a whole arm and a leg for that to even get to Australia, and then let alone selling it. And so the unit economics of it was always something that everyone had to deal with. So main distributors such as the two top grocery supermarket networks, so Woolworths and Kohl's, they were, your Kroger and HCB base, or HEB, and it's kind of like your huge supermarkets, and they have nationwide campaigns doing everything, and they really, really made sure that everyone knew where the meat was from. Like, this is from Australia. This is 100% Australian meat. This and this and that. They even made, like the milk and everything was very much about like where it was produced, where it was distributed, and even the checks and balances along the way. And all that kind of stuff. So, but at the same time, because everyone was from everywhere, literally everywhere, some people couldn't eat meat for religious reasons, or some people didn't eat meat for dietary reasons, or some people didn't eat meat for certain reasons. But then in Sydney, because there's a lot of wealth there too, new money, that there was a lot of luxury goods that was part of the culture. And so it was very much, designer stuff, or, people going around with Audis or, BMWs and, whatever else kind of thing, or getting the top tier for their luxury means of lifestyle, whether that could also be furniture inside their homes and stuff like that. And it was kind of like almost a quality of living, and just, kind of respecting each other's however that they want to be taken care of in life, and how they saw the value of it. And so, but there wasn't really, I think, because that was kind of like the basis of it. The other side of it is about leather, is that when for product campaigns, even for cars come out with offers all the time, advertising offers all the time. And so when we would talk about it at work, for certain brands, it was very much, we needed to know what the heck was part of the feature, the top of the line, because we never advertise or promote the bottom of the line unless that is the specific campaign. Is always the top, and then everyone can go through and see what the the different tiers of their customization can be. But no one promotes like not the top tier. They want to make it look good. We're putting a lot of money into the commercials, a lot of money into the marketing and the advertising, and so we have to actually understand those product specs and where it comes from, because we have to create a freaking story out of it. So all to say. And then the people who are actually the end users and maybe considering, they want to know, they want to feel attached, they want to, all that kind of stuff. So that's where I'm at with that. And then like moving back to America, it has been very much, I think there's a lot of this popular culture and about meat industry and the leather industry, fast fashion. We're seeing where a lot of these brands have gone, whether it's H&M and Zara and Forever 21. We've seen
Yeah.
that all. So that's kind of where I'm putting on the table. That's kind of my understanding of where that's at. So myth bust,
Yeah.
please, the leather industry and where we can disrupt this. Please talk about how long the industry has been, kind of like what the market looks like, where does the state of the market look like today, specifically in America and then globally. And
Yeah.
yeah, I just want to kind
No,
of lay that out there and you can, you know, because you're the leather
I,
expert.
I well, and I love that you kind of gave me your history because I think a lot of people don't really draw that connection of what they're eating to the other aspects of what they're using in their life and how those two actually play together. And you are really touching on a lot of different aspects that I think the general consumer probably doesn't even have time to think about. It's not even that they don't want to or they can't. They don't have time. They're putting food on the table, they're taking care of their families, they're trying to just make a salary. But if we break it down really simply, our daily eating habits, if you're eating meat, is going to drive your daily habits of what you do in your life, what you're going to buy at the grocery store. That impacts the supply chains and where that's going to go with what are the incoming goods driving the purchases for what we're eating. Those supply chains then hire people for salaries, and thus those salaries put food on the table. So there's this full life cycle here of how what we eat has to be part of a sustainable solution going forward. And a lot of people, I think, particularly the notion here in the US is, well, we need to reduce meat, we need to go to plant-based. And regardless of that, kind of belief or ideology, I'm not going to debate that today. But the understanding is that still today, 86% of the total globe eats meat. And if we're eating that meat, then we have to be utilizing the entire animal. Today, there's millions of hides just from the US that are going into landfill and not going into products for cars, shoes, bags, even your wallets, belts. If you think about the straps on military gear, military boots,
Mm-hmm.
boots that the firemen wear in the fires out in LA have to be real leather. Fake leather will melt and disintegrate. You cannot go out there and deal with the fires when you're working with fake products. So there's a real practicality to it, but if we think about the market and what's happened over the last, let's say, decade, the automotive leather market itself was around over $4 billion worth of value globally in 2012, 2013. Where are we at today? We're kind of stabilized at 2.6, $2.8 billion. What happened there? Well, we call it take rates in the automotive world, but that's how much leather is put into the seats or into the interior of the vehicle. The higher the take rate, the higher the percentage of leather or whatever material. And we have really run into a situation where vehicles have now switched from fully leather interiors to 40, 50%, and they mix and match vinyls with real leather. And this is allowing the vehicle manufacturers to sell leather appointed seats at a higher
Leather
price tag,
appointed.
leather appointed, leather seating surfaces. And that just means really the places that you sit and touch, the
Mm.
main pieces are real leather, the rest are fake. Now, why does this matter? Because we are literally pumping oil to make the fake alternative products when we are throwing away hides that come from the natural source where we are eating meat. Now, if there's a day when we're not eating that meat and there's not that many hides, then I could venture to believe that we would need an alternative. But what we've done as a society, and I think US is leading a lot of this, but Europe also has some of this as well, is that we now have this concept as a society that vegan is responsible and that veganism is saving animals. And that could be true if you're not eating meat, because then you have the principle that I'm not eating meat and I'm not using animal products in any way, shape, or form. But it doesn't make sense to me that if 86% of the world is eating meat, why more than 50% of our vehicles are sold with fake leather made from oil. And
Can
this
you double
doesn't
click
make
on that a little
sense.
bit? The fake is that's new information, me understanding that right now. So the drilling of oil for fake, can you
Yeah,
walk me through? Can you break that down a little bit? So this sounds like
yes,
a like an actual manufacturing process of how to get to the end product material for
yeah,
the product. It sounds like
yes.
this sounds like
So
a supply chain situation. Okay, that consumers
100%.
don't know.
Yes. And I
Okay.
think this plays in large part to how companies can look at their raw materials and their sourcing of products to
Mm-hmm.
improve the efficiency and sustainability of their product. So let's put it this way. If we look at fake leather, it is derived, and when I say fake leather, I'm talking primarily about PVC, polyvinyl chloride, or PU, which is polyurethane-based leather materials. We can talk about the um, mushroom leathers, the cactus, the pineapple. I'll get to that in a second, but that's a separate category in and of
Okay.
itself.
Let's talk about pineapples later.
We'll
Okay.
talk about pineapples later.
Okay,
But
sorry.
if we're getting to fake leather, the
Yeah.
majority of what's in vehicles today, and I'm just looking at
Mm.
vehicles, if you're looking at H&M, Forever 21, and you're buying a fake leather pants, you're buying a cheaper
Yeah.
pair of Nikes that are fake, you're getting PU or PVC leather, are
Yeah.
in large part, the majority. To make PVC or PU, you are required to utilize oil-based or petroleum-based to pump that out of the ground to make the chemicals, polyurethane, polyvinyl chloride, that is thus spread out. Kind of imagine what you use to paint your walls with, but
Yeah.
an even more viscous material. That's put on top of polyester, and then it's cured and dried, and it looks like real leather after you print a pattern into it. The
What do you mean
funny
by
thing is,
requirement? Sorry, what do you mean by requirement? Are you saying is this like a compliance thing?
well, yes, so um, like you would have, each OEM has like a requirement of how that material has to look, feel, color, texture, environmental, compliance. So they're taking this fake leather product and making it to the same standard as the real leather product. Okay, so that it
Oh,
looks, because they
okay.
have to match them side by side
Yeah.
and they don't want the consumer to see this part's fake and this part's real.
Yeah.
So it's it's hilarious to me because we are literally taking a non-renewable resource
Mm-hmm.
out of the ground to make a fake product that's cheaper. And they say, oh, it's a lower carbon footprint. And I'll get to that in a second.
Mm.
So it's cheaper. So it helps the buyer in the beginning say, hey, I've checked the box that I'm saving my company money. I've also checked the box that it's a lower carbon footprint than real leather. So check box, check box. Now I can tell the consumer that it's an environmental good story. It's also a cost savings to my boss. And so this drives a lot of the decisions at these big brands. And then in turn, they can produce it faster because it's a rolled good. If you imagine, you can't put individual cowhides on a roll and mass manufacture it down a line. You have to batch process it because it's each individual hides.
Mm.
So you can't put it into a roll and roll it out like you can fake. So there's all these economies of scale that fake leather checks the boxes for these big brands. But the thing that we take away from our business is the long-term value of what society is doing, because the pattern of society is eating the meat.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're eating the meat, the best thing to do as a society is to find how do we use those hides so that they don't go into landfill and go to waste. The most efficient thing and the best cost savings, not only for the companies, but also for our planet. If we're truly invested in doing good for our planet, which these companies make, take millions of dollars to build these sustainability reports, if they really do believe in those core principles,
They love those
then
reports.
you know
Yeah.
it's put your money where your mouth is, in the fact
Mm-hmm.
that 86% of us eat the meat, so we need to find a way to embrace the full utilization of that animal and, quite frankly,
Yeah.
respect the honor of the killing of that animal
Let's
in
talk
all of
about
its
that.
ways.
So the killing of the animal in the sense of, um, can we talk about from Indigenous? Like, can you help
Yeah,
explain from that? Because I think it will help ground
yeah,
this conversation. Because all people, everyone has all these different ideas, which is awesome. But you know, you are a scientist too, and so that's what I love about you, Katie. Is like you really mix the science with the latter technology, and you understand, you know, how this world works. So, I
I
think
appreciate it.
I think this would be helpful to kind of bring in because the
Yeah.
word sustainability also was so trendy as well. And then it's like,
Oh,
and so we're talking
God.
about so many different
Yes.
areas here. So let's start with the indigenous side of it and kind of
Yeah.
before how we treated
Yeah.
animals, how, you know, and it's not culture based kind of thing. It's just more about the humanity side of it.
Yeah. You know, there's a long history if we look at Indigenous practices. I think it's important that we honor kind of the evolution of our societies and how we have begun to feed ourselves over time. Are there practices today that need change and that are need revamping? Yes. But if we look at Indigenous cultures and particularly if I think about the Native American culture that, is we are learning more and more about every year here, and I believe we're doing better as a society here of looking back and honoring that. And the best part about that is that they when they would sacrifice or kill an animal, every piece of that, if you think about it, the bones were even used after they would make bone broth from that. They would use it to build their structures or jewelry, or they would wear it in honor. They would have a sense for the hide could be utilized for clothing, for their housing. They would use the brains for the tanning chemicals to actually chemically change the hide and make it so that it doesn't putrefy. We, as a societies and as cultures, and particularly the expertise and the knowing that these indigenous cultures had to say this animal has given its life to feed us. We owe that same animal the respect to utilize all of it and to be sustainable and not wasteful with that life. And there are many companies today that do that, and we still need to improve. I'm not going to say things are perfect because they're not, but why would we just the greed of the meat piece is not the eating of meat to me. It's the killing of an animal and only using the meat. We have to if we are, I was thinking about how much plastic I touch every single day. And the first thing I touch in the morning is my phone, which is probably a bad habit, covered in plastic, which I need to get a
Yeah.
leather case. I'm then grabbing my toothbrush, which is plastic, even plastic bristles. I'm, I'm touching countertops that have plastic vinyl varnishes. We are surrounded by plastic when we could be surrounding ourselves by natural materials from the natural meats that we're eating. And it's this type of thought process that we have to bring back into business. We have to bring back into a culture of efficiency and sustainability because we're so blinded by the short term. The beauty of the indigenous cultures is that they understood the long-term benefits and values of maintaining herd sizes so that if you were to kill all of the herd of the Native American, or the native bison here, the American bison, if you were to kill off all the herd, you don't have new herds for future generations. They knew instinctively how to build this sustainably. And we have gotten so far from that, and this is where now we say it's more sustainable to pump a non-renewable resource to then make a product that is lower carbon footprint when we have available hides to use. That doesn't make sense. And that's when people come in and say, but the animal welfare, they're not slaughtering the animals in a humane way. They're not treating these animals correctly, and that we don't want our business associated with that. Or they have
Mm.
all of these considerations of deforestation in Brazil, and that they're concerned about these these cattle coming from areas of Brazil that may be driving things like deforestation. And those are real problems. And there are things that the leather industry is talking about and is providing answers and solutions for. But that is such a small percentage. And this is where we live in this world where advertising, AI generated information, digital information is only hearing those that speak the loudest and have soundbite information. And this is another thing, if we think about with Indigenous cultures, or even how we used to communicate before the internet, was we had attention spans to hear whole contexts of stories, to understand the nuances of why we make these decisions. And I think in our business culture, we get so focused on the line items in our Excel spreadsheets that we don't take a step back and say, yes, that is important. But I also have to take a step back and say, what does this look like if I make this decision today versus 5 years? And I think the leather industry being, you asked me how old it is. I mean, it is one of the oldest professions, thousands of years old. I had an opportunity to visit last year Pompeii's oldest tannery that is still standing, covered in the ash that they have now been able to uncover and use as really an anchor for our industry of the history of where we've come from. And that history of saying it maybe takes a while for us to tan it, to create this product. Sometimes tanning leather can be a weeks-long process. But if you take a few weeks to do it right and design up front, it's the whole idea of upfront design, of vertical integration where the whole supply chain is designing it up front so that you minimize the waste and the issues downstream. A tech guy building a widget can think in the same way
Yeah,
that a
I was
leather.
just thinking the startup folks, that's
Yeah.
exactly the same. We're always thinking about maximization. We're talking about efficiency, how to really stretch every single
Mhm.
dollar that's possible. And so you're every inch of the hide almost, and it's like, why would you waste all of that kind of work? Well, then did you have a good foundation to begin with, kind of thing?
Yes.
And then even when you're talking
Yes.
about kind of like, okay, you think that you're saving a lot of money by doing it in this scalable way, but then let's say what happened with the fast fashion brands, and then the pile of, and we're just talking about cotton, we're not even talking about
Oh,
leather,
I
but
know.
the piles of cotton that was just,
Polyester.
sustainability wise,
Yeah.
that where's that going? And then we're just seeing literally yards and yards and yards of that, and then they have to do something about that, and then it creates a new business. I in my head I think it's like space garbage, but it's like a new business to
Oh,
deal with that landfill, right? And so it's just like, but
I'm
that's
writing it
like,
down. That's freaking great. Yeah.
because people aren't thinking about it. They're just see how far this goes,
Yes.
and then it contaminates the, there's just so many consequences and domino effects. And then it's like, okay, for entrepreneurs who are thinking really short term, how long are they going to be in the marketplace then, if they're thinking short term, and how they're going to bring that experience to their next venture, and so on and so forth. And then for investors
Yes.
who are basically married to these entrepreneurs for a good 10 years basically, at least, or around, at that average, is like, okay, well, they're having all these bets, and so if the mindset of what ROI actually means, like you're saying about the Excel spreadsheet, besides looking at the next 5 months, but what does that look like in 5 years or 7 years? Like, what is the actual,
Yeah.
what's on the table? And you can have those conversations today. It's not like it's not available to talk about. And if anything, you should be talking about that before you go into any agreement at that level of partnership.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's really it's really a idea of, and because you're right, I think a lot of people understand the concepts of ROI and all of those basics. And I think a lot of people may be saying, well, Katie, you're not saying anything revolutionary. And I'm not. But the thing is that that's the problem is we've gone so far into driving after metrics, singular metrics, that we've lost the basics of a holistic approach. And carbon footprint is a perfect example of this. My degree is in environmental science. I believe in carbon footprint and I believe in that metric. I'm not saying that it's some conspiracy theory, but what I am saying is that it's one metric. If we were to think about measuring our own bodies. Like I always imagine going in the grocery store and what food I put in my body. I don't go down the grocery store and only buy foods based on carbohydrates. Because if I did that, I wouldn't get anywhere if I didn't look at protein, fiber, sugar, all of the fat content. I have to look at the whole thing to balance that so that I have a nutritious diet. Well, why the heck are we boiling our businesses and measuring our businesses off of carbon footprint reduction or carbon footprint equivalencies when you have that only is measuring air, what's happening above ground? That's not looking at what's happening with water, what's happening with soil, what's happening with any of the issues surrounding biodiversity, all of these other components that are so critical to our world. And then we say, well, this company is getting to become, the Fortune 500 because they've checked these boxes. And it's boiled down to such, to me, limiting metrics. It's not that the metrics in and of themselves are wrong, but it's when you look at your blood test results and you were to only look at your iron levels and not look at anything else, you wouldn't have a good understanding of your own body and your health. So I think we have to really push that the ROI cannot look at a singular metric. And I think leather is a perfect example of this because what's happened is now people are going out and buying fake leather and they don't even know that they're getting a fake product anymore because we've boiled these things down to such simplistic things that people go, oh, looks, feels, technology is so good nowadays. We can make things, we can imitate things. And it's like, we're doing wrong by society if they don't understand where their products are coming from. We're doing wrong by society if we're building products that are coming from non-renewable sources when we have a renewable one that exists in our world today. Because if the business solution is to reduce meat, okay, let's say, and I don't agree with that, but let's just go with that hypothetical, is that we need to reduce meat in our world. You still would want to use the waste that exists in your world today while you're finding a solution in parallel to minimize it so that you come to a point that it gets to the balance of you reduce the amount of meat and you use whatever meat that is there, you're using all of it, the entire animal. You can have those two things working in parallel.
Wait, hold on. Can we double click on this? Because the people who are actually, I'm going to say all the wrong words, so help me out here.
Yeah,
But
go ahead.
okay, part of the chain is that anyways, there's going to be a center that goes through the animal, all that kind of stuff. Then when it switches hands, or maybe it's in the same factory of the sort, what happens if they just what happens to the hides that that are thrown away? And then is it even thrown away responsibility? Like if I went to, for example, like the recycling center and I, between a can versus a glass bottle, for example, I feel like there are things inside the industry where, because we don't talk about it, these are not everyday conversations necessarily,
No, no, no.
and so I'm just thinking like, there's one thing about disposal. How do we dispose things in general? It took us decades to even talk about batteries, for God's sakes, and then, so I'm just thinking out of sight, out of mind, one would be my question. And then the second thing would be, if there is a place for them to, let's say there are businesses right now that are, people are part of that area and they're like, wait, we actually don't do anything about it. Go, to what should happen, where what are the actual steps to change the SOP for them to then be like, oh, actually we can send the hides over there. But then how do you even send it? Because it's
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like I'm thinking like flies, I'm thinking about like, it's like any food piece, right? That we would see disintegrated in real time. So I'm thinking like coolers in my head. Like I'm like literally thinking about
Yes.
logistics of like what is the normal logistical process that the leather industry is used to, and what are all these other new businesses that are doing all these things that they or maybe they're not new businesses, I don't know, but like that they are dealing with, the killings of animals to turn that into something for the consumer, and then how
Yeah.
can they understand that they are actually probably even hurting their business too, that we don't see, on surface level, and like what they're doing with the mess, and like
Yeah.
how that mess is actually profitable, and how it's actually someone else's trash is someone else's treasure, I guess.
Yes.
I don't know how else to
Well,
put this.
I love what you're saying because so the basic mechanisms
Mm,
you hit the nail right on the head with the cooler and those aspects. If we think about all the ways we preserve meat, if we didn't have, let's say, electricity back in the days, they would pack it with salt, they would dry it out, they would do all of these ways to preserve it. Then comes refrigeration, and then we could cool things down. Hides are the exact same way, is that once the hide is taken off the animal, you can then salt pack it. You can brine it, so put it in a salt water mixture. You can cool it down, which would be, the really an environmentally friendly way in a sense because you don't have all that salt. However, there's comparisons here because there's energy required to cool it down. So there's always a comparison, right?
mm,
But that's kind of the mechanism. And a lot of times those that are managing the processing of the meat also have a hide house or a tannery attached so that the animal, as it's going through to be processed for meat, the hide is taken away and cleaned and managed because 98, 99% of the value of that animal is the meat. You are never killing any animal for its hide. There aren't leather cows and meat cows. It is always for meat, for dairy. Those are always the economic drivers. The hide is the byproduct. Now, there's obviously cases where people are awful people in the world. Those things exist, and we don't condone any of that in our industry. But the lion's share, 95% of the world is doing things in the right way, and the value of the meat is the priority. Well, that hide gets then taken off because it's preserved now, so it doesn't decay and putrefy, and then it is put into chemical mixtures that remove the hair, that remove the natural fats, put in synthetic fats, or they can put in natural fats, but ones that won't decay over time, and you then create a leather product that won't putrefy. And that is that tanning process. But what you can also do is a lot of people use collagen for, I put it in my tea every morning. There's also in our makeup products, in our skincare products, in all the things that
the
people
beauty,
inject into their
health,
face.
wellness industry, which is huge, like especially in
Yes.
yeah. So wait, hold on. So help me understand
So hides
if
can also go to that route, but go ahead.
yeah, no, thanks for breaking that down. So okay, so now we're here. We're at the tanning process. Boom, there's leather. Okay, I know it's not like that, but like, okay, let's say we got some
We wish
leather
it
going.
was.
Yeah. We got some leather. Now, these automobile, brands, especially the luxury ones, because their clients and customers and their partnerships and everything, they're really for higher net worth individuals who can afford, this product.
Yeah.
And so, and they are the one who, are like, hey, I want 100% genuine leather, for example, or I want a certain look, I want it to be blah, 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 blah. And so the brands have to, offer that, right? And especially the more higher up you are in that way, you have to offer that kind of level of customization.
Yes.
And so it's in I guess, demographics of it too, of them understand the value of, for example, leather. So how, just like from the point of, okay, we've made the material kind of thing. And then, okay,
Yeah.
we're there now. And then now I'm going to ship it to a car brand, a luxury car brand kind of thing. Help me understand what the stakeholder relationship is like on both sides of the table, because it feels like you guys are on a seesaw, together.
Yes.
And you have to play well together in the playground because you
Yes.
guys need each other. So
Yeah.
because those consumers want it, and I think I'm separating this out. Everyday folks, mainstream America, who may not be thinking about this and wanting, this kind of product. But now if we talk about the people who actually do want it and they're ordering it and they're requesting it, you have to, listen to
Yeah.
the customer. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad you separated it, and I'm gonna speak to how leather actually works on both ends of those spectrums and how I think these brands have missed a huge marketing opportunity.
please.
So the way the mechanism works is that, let's say you have, leather company X, they've made all of these hides. We call it a finished hide. My mouse pad is leather here, so I can use it as an example. This is made by Yusuko, so a little shout out to my friend who does some beautiful leather work. But this is a finished hide. Let's imagine this. And then they are saying, hey, I need X number of hides to make X number of vehicles. And it's all on square foot. And they say, okay, I have a pattern. So if you imagine like the pattern for making a shirt, and you have the sleeves, the front, the back, you have patterns, sewing patterns for making a seat and an interior. And you take those sewing patterns and you put them on the hide like cookie cutters to cut out the parts of the hide. And this is what drives most of the leather business, is how much can you utilize the hide?
Mm.
Because this is where efficiency and where sustainability comes into play, and cost reduction is how well I can utilize the material at hand. Now, if you think about cows and our own bodies, the places that have the best skin are maybe going to be more in the center, where there's less stretch marks, there's less wrinkles. It's the same thing with the cow. So if you think of the armpits of the cow, maybe the belly area where there's stretch marks, the neck wrinkles, those are the places that you're cutting around to make the product look uniform and to meet the OEM or the brand expectation and specification that they drive. There's an aesthetic expectation, and then there's also a technical specification of environmental requirements. The automotive industry has really led the way of making specifications that I think are improving the product over time. But this relationship and this dance between the brands and their product that's coming in, I think has become, and I'm going to use the term bastardized, because I think it's a process of over engineering. And
Ooh,
we
tell me
have
more.
also missed, yeah, we've missed a marketing opportunity, because we have driven, so previously in this conversation, we have talked about why use fake and real leather together in this product. What's the value there? Well, the fake leather is not ever going to have the natural qualities of real leather. So what ends up happening if you're going to use both materials in the vehicle is you have to make the real leather look as close to the fake leather, because it's easier to make real leather look perfect than it is to take a perfect manufactured product and make it look like a natural one. It's near impossible.
This is like your guys'
And
Photoshop battle.
yes, yes, yes. Okay. Yes, I love that. Perfect analogy. And so, because of this, it's driven the engineering specifications to be, we can only use like 50% of the hide, because they say, well, we can't use the scar. You can't have these bug bites, because the customer will see all of that and the customer won't want it because they'll see it as a flaw.
Mhm.
And so now we've grown these specifications to away from cost effectiveness, which would be utilizing the majority of the hide, and also sustainability, because we're now putting more fake products in there and we are requiring the real leather to be perfect. And that drives up cost because then I have less portions of each hide because it's a natural product. Every hide is unique. And that's the beauty. That is the marketing trick. And I wish I would have brought my pair of shoes to show you, but one of my friends gave me a pair of shoes from Echo Tannery. And Echo Shoes made a leather shoe out of the wrinkled, like stretched part of the hide that nobody likes to use. And they designed the shoe so that the wrinkles are part of the design. It's my favorite pair of tennis shoes because I love wearing it because it's using the quote unquote worst part of the hide and they made it into a beautiful shoe.
Honestly,
That,
just this sounds like the perfect campaign, honestly, for a brand to take on board because there's always these limited editions of
yes,
they have like certain, you get what I'm saying, with the cars.
yes,
They have certain like the
yes,
sport look, and they always have to advertise everything, and as
yes,
advertisers we tell people what to look at and what to do.
yes,
So that sounds like something that could be a differentiator actually in the market, and to then have the opportunity to educate and say something different.
yes.
That would kind of set
And
them apart, and they could even do like a limited edition of a certain number of quantity
yes,
of orders, for example.
yes.
Sorry, my advertising brain just went through it, and I
You're,
was just like,
yes. And you're
whoa.
picking up exactly on it because Toyota did this with one of their vehicles, and they
Uh-huh.
actually even took the scraps and made it as a case for the key fobs and all of the different aspects. So every
Yeah.
part of that hide, and they brought it up into the supply chain because guess what? If you design with all real leather and you're incorporating all of those wrinkles, everything, you're using more hide, you're reducing the cost, you
Mm.
also reduce the amount of foam, glue, all the things underneath the seat because you now have all of your designers working up front. So now you have less engineering changes, which that's very costly in automotive. When you design up front and you have your marketing person there saying, no, everybody is craving a more natural look online. Everyone's tired of photoshopped images of women and every photoshopped images of everything. People want real things. They want the same thing with their car. They want a real piece of product that they can relate to and not think it's just some photoshopped fake leather in their vehicle.
And also the people
And
with money to be able to buy at that level too, they're gonna want something
yes,
unique as part of their collection.
yes. And
These are
that's
more
where I want to go
multiple
back
car
to the
people.
point. Yes, because this is where
Yeah.
natural products can service that spectrum because you
Hmm.
touched on a really important piece of luxury consumers versus maybe the general consumer. And the luxury consumer is, yes, it's vital and important for the value of leather because leather is an enduring product and people are buying these luxury vehicles as a product that they're going to keep and maintain. And it's not a leased vehicle. It's not something their children are going to jump in and eat cereal and spill milk in the back seat. So there's a different quality of product that you can put in there. But you can also use leather and say to the mom who needs a sturdy vehicle that she's going to lease and say, hey, this product is going to evolve. It's going to be easy to clean. You just have to learn how to work with the product so that it evolves with you. And then it's not going to crack and peel like fake leather. And it's going to be better resale value for the OEMs because the biggest problem we have in America here, where everyone leases a vehicle and they go, I don't care what it looks like as long as it lasts 3 years, is that right when you take that vehicle to the used market, you now have the uphill battle of the value of that vehicle
Yeah.
because the cracked fake leather seats
Uh-huh.
are near impossible to repair compared to a real leather real leather seat.
Sorry, I'm
And
just
so,
laughing because you're literally touching on the unit economics of if someone is owning, let's go back to ownership for a second. If someone owns a franchise of auto shops
Yes.
and and it's churning, in a way of like they're seeing these cars come through, and you're saying that with the breakdown of fake leather, they gotta strip it, and that's the cost. It's almost like if you were to fix a home, and then the time in between with new tenants, you have to do a lot. You have to put, there's a lot of costs associated. So can you break
Yes.
down real quick what those costs are before it can get back onto market in a market that's already depreciated, with a depreciated asset,
Yes.
in a
Yeah.
secondary market too?
Yeah. I mean, really, I think there's a lot to be said for the costs to me are, if you think about warranty costs of that vehicle in those first few years and what's happening in terms of the durability of that product in the first 3 years. So there's that cost. But let's look beyond that, Lisa. And now you're going into you need to resell it. And we all know that a lot of these big brands have stakes in the resale of, I mean, the used car sales is what's driving a lot of these dealerships, not necessarily the lease deals. Okay. It's a front that the leases are what's driving it, but really the used car sales is the big chunk of change that are making money at these dealerships. And so when you think about that used car value, what is the one thing that outside of the engine and how the mechanics of the vehicle works is how does that car feel when the person gets into it? How does it smell? How does it
The smell
look?
part.
Yeah, the smell part. And I just bought a used vehicle because I got rid of my 2020 Jeep Grand Cherokee and I loved that car and I said, "You know what? I want that same car again." So I went back and I looked on the used market. And I just wanted to look at other cars just to see what this looked like. And fake leather seats by and far are dirtier, and this is just my own little sample size, but dirtier, cracked, and have more defects that they try to patch up. But you can see the patching in these vehicles. Now, real leather, when you patch it, and I had this opportunity to talk with different people through social media. I would talk to these influencers that were making these reels that are repairing vehicles. So a lot of these guys, how they make cash on the side, there's specialists who look at how do they repair interiors and they work with these dealerships. And he was making cool reels of all of these vehicles he's renovated. And I said, I need to just talk to a few of these guys and figure out what is the reality. And they said, real leather all day, every day. I can make it look almost so that the customer doesn't know. And it also lasts because that's the other thing is the repair with fake leather isn't lasting. And so it's like all these components. I want to like just shake the brands and say, you're shooting yourselves in the foot because your ROI is still not far enough out. Your ROI is maybe the 3 years. Will my fake leather last me the 3 years through the lease? Not will my fake leather last me through the sale of that reused vehicle and the second life of that vehicle. And if you think about it, Europe is going towards end of life legislation where these brands are going to have to be responsible for where these cars end up in landfill when they're
Oh.
completely done. So now you have a plastic product, because fake leather, oil, plastic, it's all the same as your water bottle. Now you have a fake plastic that's going into landfill.
Uh-huh.
If it's all real leather, now you can grind that up and you can use it and it's going to return back to nature if you design the leather the right way. All of these components have to be part of the discussion up front. And yes, it takes a lot longer to go through all this stuff. But once you've got it set, the exponential value on the other end of the spectrum for our planet, for the end of line, bottom line profit, as well as for the consumer appreciation for the brand value and trust of the reputation, is immense. And they're completely missing this whole story because they're so focused on this 3 year. And this is where
Mm.
the general consumer plays a big part because I think moms, general people that are driving their cars, they have to put kids in the back seat would be like, heck yeah, I'd love to put, scars and marks in my vehicle because the kids are going to do that too. And it's going to be unique and fun. And it's going to be part of my vehicle.
Yeah.
Why why are we so focused on perfection and we've driven ourselves into a plastic perfection obsession. And we see this in women in our advertisements for how our bodies and our faces should look, that we shouldn't have wrinkles, and then at 35 I should be injecting my face with stuff. And then I also see it with my vehicle, that my Cadillac should be pristine and have no wrinkles in my seat. This is ridiculous, and it's wasteful, and
Yeah.
it's driving bottom line changes in the business. It's driving marketing changes that I think are inauthentic, and people are starting to see it. And quite frankly, I think it's just not practical. It's
Yeah.
just at an, if we go back to that Indigenous culture and that part of the conversation, it's not doing any good for our culture to think this way.
And
And if
you're
we
and
really are stewards of that, what are
yeah.
we doing?
I love at the end because you're really talking about the refurbishment model. You're talking about, and that we
Yes.
see a lot even in other brands too, how they're very open about how their refurbishment like lines, and that's a part of their business that they have available. It's almost like in between for wholesale, but not really because it's for like end consumers.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is that the leather is just as good, and if the companies can understand that and they're able to reposition it, they're actually able to get more revenue as well in that way and increase the integrity of their brand and having people more go to them where all the second or third hand places as well. And so you can kind of
Yes.
rechannel a lot
Yes.
of those monies in a way that you can still kind of be almost in control of the quality of that quality control.
Yes. Yes.
And I know we have to wrap up here, but I just want to wrap up this with this one point back to mainstream got milk.
Yes.
Can you just
Yes.
touch on that real quick and we'll just wrap up because I just think
Yes.
it's the perfect way to kind of summarize this whole thing. And with my background in marketing and advertising, your understanding from farm science, you're so smart, Katie, and like the auto industry, like how I was just like, I'm
Great.
so in awe. I admire you so much. And so let's
Thank
talk
you.
about the Got Milk campaign real quickly. And then I think I want to leave this off as like almost homework for people to think about, what is the
Yes.
current Got Milk campaign? Because it's about the frame, it's how you think, it's how you approach problems. We can't solve everyone's freaking problems today, but they can hire the right people for that to happen. But like how for them to
Yes.
think about it. And I think this is something that everyone knows about because everyone knows about Got Milk. And if you don't, well, you've been living under a rock. So
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought this up because, I am leading the Is It Leather campaign, and this is really the leather industry's version of Got Milk. And um, Got Milk, another great one, another shout out to Australia is Woolmark and what they've done with their advertisements that's going on right now. I really encourage people to go and view their ads on YouTube and some of the videos they're doing. It is beautiful examples of what good marketing and advertising can do to tell and share the story in a new way and drive innovation, drive different results. And Got Milk did that because I think a lot of times we think of Got Milk with the milk mustache. This was born out of California. They kind of came together, these dairy farmers, and they said, we need to figure out how to grow the market and to advocate for our
increase
products.
sales now.
They all pitched,
Yeah,
yeah, they all pitched in.
that was the goal.
This then they found out the success of this, and then
Hmm.
it grew to North America and then the globe. And a lot of people think, well, that's just drove milk sales, but that's not really what ended up being the sustaining aspect of the Got Milk campaign. And this is the beauty and the genius of the Got Milk campaign, was that this bred an opportunity for people to talk about milk. Yes, if you look at the history, the milk sales did increase directly after the launch of the campaign, but it then tapered back down. So then how is it that the Got Milk campaign was actually successful? Well, what it did was it opened the doors for the dairy industry to look at different variations of dairy products. So if you look at how butter, cottage cheese, cheeses, different types of dairy products were then integrated into the dairy system, yogurts. This has now become a staple of high protein, options for a lot of people in our world today that weren't as readily available in our world a few years ago. And the Got Milk campaign was the vision for driving their overall growth in the market for a natural product. And this is where we're going with the leather industry, because the consumers need to see the value of what nature truly brings, and that we need to be more resourceful with what we have from nature, what we are using today, and how to more effectively use it, and also drive, the profitability of companies that hire people around the world and put food on the table for all of us to live our lives. There is an economic component of this. It's not just for the greed of these businesses. We all are a part of this system and are working within it. And so if we can do this with products, and we are changing this for leather, I encourage other brands to think about this in this way, because it's not just about making the pitch for your product. It's about it's advocating for your product and all of the uses that surround your product, so that we build a society and a system that brings value to consumers, true value to consumers, but also to the companies that sustain us. And Got Milk did that. They brought value to consumers, where it now opened the doors to all of these different dairy products that we never had before, while it also helped grow that market and sustain it, so that people aren't drinking the Gatorades and soft drinks of the world that really aren't that healthy, because that's what was competing against milk, were these manufactured products. And there's a place for all of that in the world. Look, I love a Coca-Cola every once in a while, but we have to also say that there is a place for marketing that has an authentic meaning to it, but also is impacting not just that product, but the whole ecosystem around that product. That is where I think even tech guys, startups, and leather guys all have in common, is they can look at one marketing initiative as not just growing their product, but growing their industry. And if you grow the industry, everybody rises.
It's the freaking
So
ecosystem. It's all the players involved. And I love that what you're saying of like, those farmers and those small businesses, because of the Got Milk campaign, they were able to receive the monies to be able to grow. And then, like you're
yeah,
saying, have all like the different nut milks or whatever. And they were able to have the different manufacturing, and they're able to operate in
yeah,
a way that was more commercialized. And it gave them the level up, which then made that into their own family. Goodness,
yes.
Katie. Goodness.
It's
Thank
so
you for your
cool.
time. It's awesome. No, this has been awesome, because you've really laid out in how I think, even if someone is not necessarily in the leather industry, you really broke down the economics of where things go. And I think anyone who's listening to this, whether you're an investor, you're a business leader, you're a executive, a major stakeholder, I mean, this is going to change the way how you think and approach conversations at the table. And that's what we want, is just higher intelligent conversation. To make better decisions, right? Because that's
Yes.
what we have in all of us, the power to make better decisions. So thank you so much,
Thank you.
Katie, for educating us and leading the way, and how to talk about this and how to structure it in a way that people can, because the conversation is a collaboration, right? And so
Yeah.
thank you for exposing a lot of the industry for people to think about and be like, whoa, what do I have that is leather?
Yeah.
What is actually fake? What is plastic? And just being a little bit more aware of it from the B2B side. The consumer
Yeah.
stuff, there's a lot of people in this world, but the people who are making the decisions of telling people what to do and what to see and what to hear, and putting the budget allocation towards
Yeah.
that, and the people who are the storytellers, the creatives who are putting together these campaigns, working with the marketing team, and the marketing team, working with the product team, and then align that with the business objectives, and then all the partnerships in the ecosystem of how everyone's going to be affiliated and associated in that way. And what does that mean? It's a big job.
It's a huge job. And I thank you so much for having me on. I really admire what you're doing and leading, and how you're pulling together networks of leaders that is meaningful. And I think that what you're doing with the networks and with Seattle and even your own company behind that is giving us that opportunity to really have an authentic approach. So
Thank you,
thank you.
Katie. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.